Hello, barefoot parents. This has been so freeing to just be able to grab my phone and record a podcast episode. But not only that, I've had a few days to myself, 2 or 3 nights in a row. I put the little ones down for bed and my husband's out of town. And so I've had a few nights alone. And as I'm writing out these episodes or as I'm writing out an email for these episodes, it's like I'm a blank slate and the Holy Spirit is using this time where I can free my mind and I don't have this time limit or time constraint or someone asking me or me having to pour out for somebody else. The Lord is just pouring into me, and it's been a sweet, sweet time as I just take one step of faith and one action step towards the next goal. It doesn't seem like a big step, but it's like God's still honoring it, and there's revelation in the journey. And it's so rewarding to receive that revelation because it's such a confirmation of okay, Lord, I feel like I'm on the right track, because it's so encouraging to stay on that track whenever you are putting one foot in front of the other. And God just begins to continue to illuminate the path. And anyways, I'm going to just dive into more of that as we get into this episode. But I got my birth pictures back this week, and I'm so excited to go through them. Over 300 images and a few videos, extra videos that I get to go through. I did have my sister-in-law here and record this free birth, this last birth with Blaine, just 2.5 months ago. So I've had the videos, mostly videos from my phone, but she also took some great pictures, and I can always pause the videos and take some screenshots. But getting a different angle and, just a photographer's point of view with a professional camera is just exciting to begin to look through. So that's that. And leads me into talking about my birth courses and just this course that I'm trying to build. And all the things birth related that I'm going to talk about, healing your birth trauma, and joining me on the beta founding members program for the birth course that I'm writing and launching, and that I so badly want you to join because I want you to have the amazing birth that you desire. And so if you want that birth that Jesus desires for you, if you want to learn how to, work through the pain that our society has just told us you have to just endure incredibly hard pain, then I want to walk you through that mindset goal and that mindset challenge. And let's remove all of that's blocking you from receiving just a way less painful birth. I can't promise you a pain-free birth, but I can promise you a way less painful birth when you just simply learn a few things about birth, when you learn about the way that the body works, and when you learn coping mechanisms and what to do during labor, how to get your body into position, how to get your baby into position, and how to relax during those contractions so that your body just does the work for you. You don't have to do the work. That's the beauty of it. So I'll see you in this episode. Welcome to the Barefoot Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Cassie Hutton. I help Christian moms have a home birth they desire through education and the Word. If you're an old soul that is passionate about restoring godly wisdom and disconnecting from this interconnected world, then you're in the right place. Let's discuss godly restoration through the 5 H's of home: home birth, homeschool, homemaking, homemade, home remedies, and health. All right, y'all. So here I was, editing the last podcast, episode 49. Woo woo, we're in episode 50. I've made it to 50 episodes. That's amazing. I feel like I've been a little bit all over the place, but again, it's just a step of faith. As you begin to take one step at a time, God begins to illuminate the path. That's how I feel today. We'll see how I feel next week about it. I might be on a totally different topic next week, but right now, it just feels beautiful that God is just stamping this and saying, move forward, keep going with this, Then there's just so much in one story. I'm still on the hemorrhaging woman, the woman with the issue of blood. There's just so much there. And it's just a few sentences. But it's enough of a mystery that the Holy Spirit can reveal it to you and cause you to go, wow, that's amazing. I had never thought of that before. And then God's given me this platform of a podcast so that I actually get to share these things. I don't have to go to Facebook and write it out, which I love writing. Y'all know that. But it's also fun because I'm long-winded. I actually don't like reading long-winded things though. I like if I'm someone that needs to be taught, I need it short, sweet, and to the point. But on the other hand, I'm someone who gives out a whole lot, way more than people really need. But hopefully I'm attracting the people that need that. So anyways, it's just beautiful. So I'll just tell you, as I was writing out the show notes for episode 49 and why telling your story matters. And one thing that I didn't share in that podcast before we get into this one was I had this picture of myself. I shared with you how I had this wrong image of myself and the way that God wanted me to share and who God wanted me to share to. But I had this thought as I was writing out how she shares her story, but she's sharing her story with Jesus. She's sharing her story with Jesus. Like, what if I put myself in her shoes and kind of, it's, the Holy Spirit's like prompting these questions and this thought process that I'm having. And he basically asks me, share your story with me. What if you only shared your story with me? What if I was the only person that ever heard your story? And it's like a humbling place to be, to think that Jesus cares so much that he already knows our story, but he also knows that we need to tell our story. And so that's where I kind of saw myself. It was like, yeah, I could come to you and tell you my story. But he didn't leave it there, just like he didn't leave it there for this woman who came out of the tent and the place of isolation. And she came and told her story in front of this huge crowd of people. Something that you and I would probably never dream of talking about in front of people unless it's other girlfriends who are either experiencing the same thing, struggling with the same thing. And even then, sometimes we're like, when we want to talk about the vivid parts, we like want to quiet our voice down, we want to go to the women's bathroom and make sure that other women don't hear us unwrapping our, feminine products. It's like, this is something that we all go through. We have to start talking about these things and normalizing it and not making it this place of shame. And so that's what I want to talk about today is shame and why telling your story matters from the last episode and why it kind of springboards into episode 50 is that shame is something that causes you to hide. So it's not just something that we carry. It's not just something that we need to break free of. It's actually shame. If you don't ever get set free from your shame, like the woman with the issue of blood, when she came out of that place of isolation, that was her step of faith in saying, I will no longer walk in this place of shame. And Jesus honored that. And it was her faith that set her free. And so that's what I want to encourage you today. If you are in that place of shame, let's say, because there's like layers of healing, right? Like Jesus set me free from the abortion and the trauma that I experienced whenever I was a 17-year-old. And here I was like a 28-year-old. I'd already had 2 children, but I still walked in such a place of shame over that abortion. And, it was still so traumatizing to me that I couldn't, talk about it. I could not listen to the news. If there was any mention of certain types of birth stories or going to doctor's visits, those types of things would just send me snowballing back into all of the things that I had experienced in the past. And so when Jesus took that shame from me, and he said to me, it was just lots of things that he did and he said, and like visions that I saw that removed me from all of that shame and just unshackled me and just broke the chains. But I still had to learn to share my story. I still had to learn to open my mouth and speak out. I still had to learn how to write my story and how to speak this out in a way that people could understand it, and in a way that was helping me take one step after another. And what I found in sharing my story, and the reason that shame is such a big thing, is because shame actually just silences your voice completely. It causes you to go hide. It causes you to step back. It causes you to not fulfill this calling that God has placed on your life this side of heaven. So to talk about shame, let's talk about Adam and Eve in the garden. When they experienced sin, shame came upon them. And what did they do? They went and they hid. They hid from God. And they no longer had this time of talking with God and conversing with Him. And in the cool of the evening, they didn't have that moment with God. And God had to come to them and say, hey, where are you? What's going on here? Why are you distant from me? And it caused Adam to look inwardly at himself. Where are you? What's going on? And God slowly began to pull Adam out of that shame. And it caused the question that God asked him, caused Adam to open his mouth and begin speaking and begin to reveal what was in his heart. We ate of this fruit in the garden and we didn't eat it, right? He blames it on Eve. And so all of this junk begins to then come out of his heart because God begins to prompt him to reveal these things that God already knows, but he needs Adam to bring what's hidden in the darkness into light by speaking it out. And so it was through the speaking it out that God was able to break the shame off of Adam. And so I want to read this to you. Right before I got on here, I knew that I had put quite a few posts on Facebook about shame, so I just searched my Facebook and the word for shame. And this was December 18th, 2022, so just a little over a year ago, where I was really battling some health issues and I did not know what was going on. I didn't understand why I was having extreme ups and downs and just the constant irregular cycles and just, man, I'm telling you, the emotions were just so all over the place. I could be raging one day, extremely happy the next day, crying the next day, overwhelmed the next day. It was just all over the place and it was not fun. And this is what I wrote. This is a season for me. This season for me has been an ebb and flow of lots of ups and downs, extreme highs and lows, some healing, and go figure, hormonal imbalances after having a baby. It's been really hard to read my Bible and pray. Thank God I have enough Bible in me thus far that He can still speak truth in this quiet season. This week was especially hard, and I found myself peeling back another layer to this thing we call life. We never intentionally set out to hurt people we love or set bad examples for our kids, but it happens. Our actions make us want to run and hide when we mess up. And our mind tells us what our heart doesn't want to hear or vice versa. It'd be a lot easier to crawl into a cave after the week I had. And the hardest thing about this whole mess is that I didn't want to show my heart and face to God. Again, it'd be a lot easier to tuck myself away in a cave for a season until I felt like I've repented enough to come out. Then in the middle of all of this chaos, I saw Ellie hiding under the baby crib, and I knew she'd done something she wasn't supposed to do. I thought of Adam and Eve in the garden hiding their shame, and I saw myself in Ellie's place hiding. I suddenly saw God in my shoes and myself under the crib, and I heard the words He spoke so gently in the garden. Cassie, where are you? So I spoke out to Ellie, where are you? I wasn't mad at Ellie. I wasn't upset. I didn't even know what she was hiding from, but I sure didn't want her to stay there. Her perception of what happened was that she'd be in trouble and I'd be mad. But I called her out from under the crib and let her know it was okay to come out. And as I spoke to her, I heard my own words wash over me from a forgiving and loving God. We don't have to wear that shame. If there's ever anyone that disappointed God the most, it was Adam and Eve. but he never shamed them. He sacrificed for them and covered their shame. Jesus came and took our shame and completely abolished it on the cross. And I want you to put that into perspective of your own life and replace your name. Put your name in front of where are you? God's asking you that today. Where are you? Gauge your heart and where you're at. Why is that shame holding you back from taking that first step of faith? And you have to take that first step of faith. Just like when I was writing these emails, just like whenever I picked up the phone to record a podcast, like the business coach encouraged me to do. That was a step of faith. That was an act of faith. And quite honestly, when I did that, it wasn't like it wasn't a good feeling. I was like, I don't want to have to pick up my phone. I want to have quiet time. I want to have an office space. I want there to be time set aside where I don't have kids constantly interrupting me. That's not fair. It's not right. As moms, and in this culture that we live in, like we've come to this place in our culture where moms just never get a break. Never, ever, ever do we get a break. And we have to drive a million places to get all the different things. But it actually became freedom for me. It didn't feel good at first. I was mad because sometimes I want it to be perfect. But in doing so, in getting past my own feelings, I found freedom. And that's exactly what sharing your story does for you. You actually will find healing as you begin to share your story, as you begin to step out. That shame will begin to wash away from you. You will become so far removed from it as you begin to tell your story that sometimes you have to sit back and remember where you came from, because your story, you've told it so many times at this point that it's just like a book that you once read. It's like, I'm no longer that person, right? I mean, you become saved and Jesus washes all of that away. And I've said that before. Whenever Jesus washed that sin away and he radically saved me and changed my perspective about his love for me and my love for me, it was like that girl that existed before then was a book that I once read. But I still was close enough to my story that I could tell it. But when you get removed from your story so far, you sometimes have to step back and remember where you came from, what you once were in, what that felt like. That's my refrigerator next to me. The fan, for some reason, makes a really loud noise to break up this very serious talk that I'm giving you right now. But I'm encouraging you to step out, take that first step of faith, start your podcast, start writing your book, start telling your story on Facebook in little snippets. You don't have to write your whole story. In fact, it's better. People start following along. They're like, hey, I want to read more. Tell me more. I love that. We love from, these gutter to glory stories, especially when it comes from Jesus. Christians love hearing other Christian stories. They get encouraged. We want to hear those things. We want to hear how my story helped you. Of course I want to hear that. I need some encouragement over here. We all need encouragement. And your story can help somebody else. So I encourage you with that today. And I pray for you that boldness would just come upon you, that shame would be washed away, and that when you take that first step and that first act of faith, that beginning to tell your story will just become easier and easier and easier. And then you'll learn. And then as you begin to share it, God's going to just begin to reveal more to you. And you're going to walk in a greater measure of healing. And therefore, you have greater spiritual strength over the things that once held you back. So I bless you, Mama, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Barefoot Parenting. If what you're doing works for you, is healthy for your family, and is growing you in the ways you need to grow, then it's time to step out of the feeling of guilt and shame and wear your Barefoot Mama badge proudly. Remember, barefoot parents are doing things differently, so be encouraged today. If you're feeling the pushback in your parenting style, you're doing something right.